Imagine trying to build a skyscraper without any blueprints. Well, that's how it feels to run a company without a process map. So today I'll show you what are process maps, how you can build them, what are the most common challenges that people face when building process maps, and what are the best tools and systems you can use to implement them in your business. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to build a company brain like this that will include an org chart and a full visual representation of every single process in your business. So what is a process map? A process map is just a flowchart of how a certain process is done within an organization. In other words, it's just a visual representation of how something gets done. It includes all of the inputs, all of the outputs, all of the stakeholders that are involved in a particular process and laid out visually so everyone can collaborate and understand what happens in what order, what are the decisions that need to make, and finally, what are the outputs that are a result of this process happening. So why do you need a process map? Well, everyone knows the quote that a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. Well, the same goes when it comes to transferring knowledge about a process to your team members. You probably tried building out a doc, you probably tried building out an SOP or a training in a written format, trying to describe how something gets done within your business. And that is great because you've already put down some thought into how things happen inside of your business and you tried transferring that knowledge to someone else. The reason we build process maps is because it's way easier for people to learn from a visual perspective. So putting down a process on a whiteboard, on a piece of paper, or in a software tool, and visually seeing how does the process happen, what are the decision trees, what are the outputs, what are the key stakeholders, it's just a way simpler way on everyone to understand, all right, this is what we're working on, this is how it's happening, and this is how we can make it better. After you have that, you can then start developing more detailed documents that are sort of serving as a way to enhance the process map to go into more detail. But process maps, you can think of them as a high-level overview of how something happens, and it's really a visual collaboration tool for you and your team to be able to all look at the same thing, black and white, very binary, and understand, all right, subjectively, this is what needs to happen in this order in order for this output to be created. And that's why we build process maps. The biggest challenge that people face when building process maps is they just don't know where to start. They get overwhelmed about, all right, which tool am I going to use? How deeply am I going to describe the process? Who should I involve? What processes should I map out in the first place? And my simple advice to everyone that's sort of facing this, I'm kind of overanalyzing, not sure how to do it, is to just pull out a pen and paper or just pull out a whiteboard and start jotting down a process that's currently bothering you the most. It can be your onboarding, it can be your sales process, it can be your employee onboarding process, whatever it is, just pull out a piece of paper, pull out a whiteboard, and start mapping down things in sequential order, super simple boxes. This needs to happen, then this needs to happen, then this needs to happen, and this is the final output. That way, you'll start to break through that sort of limiting belief that, hey, before I start doing any of this, I need to have the perfect tool. I need to have the perfect, description of everything that happens in my business. And that's what stops a lot of people from actually starting this process. So to simplify everything, just start off really simple. Don't overcomplicate the tools. Don't overcomplicate the process. Number one, start with the process that's currently bothering you the most. And then number two, use what works. Is that a piece of paper? Is that a whiteboard? Doesn't really matter. Just start the process of mapping down things and pulling things out of your head onto a visual representation, and this will be a version 1 that you'll be able to build upon. There are two main types of process maps. Number one is a prototype map, and we use prototype maps to basically discover, first of all, what is a process? How does it look like? And then how do we iterate on that process and how do we make it better? And people use different types of prototype maps. Some people might just bring out a bunch of Post-it notes in different colors and start laying down these Post-it notes to represent a visual process. Other people, again, might use a whiteboard to try to, draw it down and have multiple markers in different colors. And really the prototype maps initial priority is to try to get down as many ideas of the current process and any potential improvements down on paper so everyone can understand it and visually see, all right, this is what's happening and this is how we're going to improve it. The way that the prototype map differs from an actual final, we can call it a documentation map, is that a prototype map reflects the current state, but also all of the possible future states. What are the improvements? What are the challenges that we're facing? So it tends to be very messy and involves a lot of different things that are not going to be making it into the final version of the map. The second version of the map is something we call a final map or a documentation map. And that map is basically meant to show, all right, this is the final blueprint. This is how everything happens as is. There's no additional notes to it. There's no what ifs, there is no future considerations. This is just an accurate snapshot of what is currently happening, and it's basically meant to be a blueprint of how someone should conduct a process within an organization. So an example of this is a process map like this. So this is an example of a prototype map for onboarding. So this is an onboarding template we use for most of our clients, and as you can see, it has a lot of things going on. It has links to different softwares, it has post-it notes, it has general context, it has improvement opportunities, it's all over the place. We're here just trying to jot down, how is this process even happening? So when it comes to working with companies that don't have pre-established process maps, this is usually the first thing that I suggest people do. Just get your team together and start putting down things on paper. Don't think about how it looks. Don't think about, what are the colors of things? What are the shapes of things? Does this look nice? Does this looks tidy? Your idea here is just to put down information on a piece of paper and get everyone to collaborate and actually try to understand and make sense of the process that is happening. So here you can see screenshots, you can see, links to different tools and stuff like that. So this is a great example of a prototype map, and this, if you don't have anything in your business, this should be the start. Whether that's on paper, on a whiteboard, post-it notes, or in Lucidchart like this should be the first step when it comes to building a process map. An example of a finished map, or something that we call a document map, looks something like this. And in this case, we have a hiring agency, and I've tried to hide as much context as possible because this is actually based on one of our clients. So this is how it actually looks like. So a client closes, creates a job application. There's 2-3 parallel flows that are happening. So it's cleaned up. There's not a lot of notes. It's just a very simple process map showing exactly what needs to happen in order from basically the start where a job application form is open all the way to that position being closed. So these more final maps are going to be constrained. They're going to have less information. They're going to have less fluff and clutter, because the point of them is for them to be very concise and very clear for your team to actually be able to use them in their day-to-day. So what are the best tools to use to actually build process maps once you got going and once you sort of started establishing your initial process maps? There's really two main competitors in the process map space, at least in the online business space. Number one is Lucidchart, and number two is Miro. Both are good. Both are fine. We prefer Lucidchart internally, but honestly, at this point, if you're just getting started, just setting up your initial process maps, both will work just fine. I would say with highly just in consideration is that anything that you're going to be using for your process mapping has to have the ability to be shared across your team. And the other important component is just security and making sure that, only the right people are seeing the process maps that you build. So, if you have multiple departments and you kind of don't want departments seeing different stuff, make sure you sort of have that access sharing, security level permissions locked down. Lucidchart is really good for this. It's an enterprise tool. So if you run a bigger business, I would definitely encourage you to go towards Lucidchart. So now that you've picked your tool, you know how to build process maps. Now I'll actually show you what is the end result and how is this supposed to look when you go through this entire process. At the final stage, you should have a company brain. And what we call a company brain is just a collection of a lot of different process maps and information about your business. So the way a company brain looks, at least when you work with us as a client, is it has a couple of main components. And number one is an org chart. So an org chart is basically a representation of all of the employees in your team, all of the different departments, who's the direct reports, the information about your team. And it's really just serves to have a clear understanding of what does your organization look like, what do the managerial lines look like, and there's just no confusion on who's involved in the team, who's under who needs to report to who. It just very visually shows that, and it's available to your entire team and your management as well. The second main component of a company brain is something that we call a data infrastructure. And a data infrastructure just shows you what are all the different entities that you have in your business. So if you have clients, those clients might have different brands. Those brands might have different offers. You might have your vendors, you might have your outside contractors. So you need to understand, all right, what are all the entities that I have in my business and how can I track them and how are they correlated together? So oftentimes what we do is with our clients, we just put everything down into Lucidchart and map out exactly how are they related to each other, and how does that sort of work in with the rest of the process. And then for basically every single sub-process in your business, you have a separate tab, a separate process map that is showing, everything from how you do onboarding, how you do your sales process, how you do your fulfillment, how do you do your employee onboarding. And in this stage, you might have 7 tabs, you might have 27 tabs, depending on the size of your business. But for every single sub-process, for every single small sort of process map in your business, you want to have a separate tab so you can keep things kind of separated, and then you can navigate in between those sort of by department. The biggest mistakes that I see people make when trying to implement process maps in their business is, number one, they just never get to it because they get stuck in paralysis by analysis. They can't find the perfect tool. They don't know about the process, how to do it. They're afraid about how it looks. Well, this video solves that for you. It's very simple. Start with pen and paper. Doesn't need to be complex. And then gradually, as you start to get better at this and more comfortable, you can start transitioning it into more sophisticated tools and start putting more sense into it. The second most common mistake that people make is they never share it with their team. So if you as a founder or as a manager, department lead, start building out process maps, but you kind of never show it to anyone because it's not really formalized yet, it doesn't have the right coloring, it's not formatted properly, it's not in the right swim lanes, you're losing out on the benefits of the process maps. The benefit of the process map is the collaboration that can happen when using a process map. And that's the biggest mistake is you've built it, but you kind of kept it for yourself so you don't get any value out of it. If you built a process map, even a pen on paper, even on a whiteboard, take a picture of it, send it to someone, walk someone through it, have them have their comments on it, and then iterate on the process. Make this an iterative process. And that kind of builds up on mistake number 3, which is just people build a version of a process map and stop there. Hey, this is it. This is everything that's going to happen. And the reality is the process map is a very fluid thing. It's going to change sometimes week over week, hopefully not, but as your company is going to be changing, as your company is going to be growing, you're going to figure out mistakes. You're going to figure out ways to make things better. So a big mistake is what people do is they just never update them. They just never add additional stuff to them, and they just kind of get stuck and sort of shelve it somewhere else. Use it as a tool. A process map is a great tool to show what is currently happening, but it's even a better tool to show what can be happening, what can be improved within a particular process. So those are the 3 main mistakes that I see people make all the time. One of the most important processes that people oftentimes want to figure out how they can do well is how can they onboard clients in their business. So if you want to figure out how you can do that, you can watch this next video.